He stood quietly in the corner of the grand ballroom, his black suit slightly wrinkled, his tie a little too loose. The soft light from the chandeliers reflected on his tired eyes that had seen too many sleepless nights and too many empty mornings. Everyone else was smiling, laughing, celebrating love, but Ethan Walker was just existing. He wasn't supposed to be there, not really. He was only a guest, a favor to an old friend who didn't want an empty seat at his wedding. But sometimes, life hides its biggest turning points in moments that look completely ordinary. And that night, when the music slowed and the world seemed to move in slow motion, something happened that would change his life forever. Before we go deeper into Ethan's story, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the beauty of unexpected love, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your small gesture helps spread more heartwarming stories like this one. Now, let's go back to that night. Ethan had once been a man of dreams, a software engineer with a promising career, a loving wife, and a little daughter who was the sunshine of his world. But 2 years ago, a tragic car accident had taken his wife away, leaving him alone with a 5-year-old girl who cried for her mother every night. Since then, he had stopped attending parties, stopped believing in miracles, stopped believing in love. He only worked, cooked, cleaned, and tried to keep a smile on his daughter's face. He wore grief like a shadow, invisible to others but heavy on his heart. When his best friend Mark invited him to the wedding, Ethan almost declined. He had no desire to sit among laughing couples, no interest in watching another love story bloom while his had long since ended. But Mark had insisted, saying, "Come, Ethan, you need to breathe again." So, for the first time in years, he rented a tuxedo, dropped his daughter at his mother's house, and forced himself into a world he no longer felt part of. The venue was breathtaking, a seaside resort, golden light reflecting on crystal glasses, music that seemed to whisper joy. Ethan sat at a corner table, far from the dance floor, sipping orange juice instead of champagne. He watched people move gracefully, smiling faces blending with the rhythm of the night. Then his eyes caught her, the woman everyone was whispering about. Sophia Hale, the CEO of Hale Enterprises, young, powerful, confident. She was known in business circles as a woman of steel, someone who never mixed emotions with work. But tonight, she wasn't surrounded by board members or media flashes. She was just a woman in a silver gown, elegant and glowing under the soft lights. She smiled at everyone but looked deeply alone. Their worlds couldn't have been more different. She was success and luxury, he was struggle and simplicity. And yet, fate has its way of connecting broken souls. As the music changed to a slow romantic tune, couples began to pair up. Laughter echoed as the groom pulled his bride to the center. Ethan smiled faintly, ready to leave quietly, when someone's shadow fell across his table. He looked up, and it was her, Sophia Hale, the woman who had everything he didn't. For a second, he thought she must be asking for someone else. But then she said softly, "You're not dancing." Ethan hesitated, unsure how to respond. He smiled politely. "I don't dance anymore." But Sophia didn't walk away. Instead, she extended her hand and said, with a spark of mischief and sincerity in her eyes, "Then let's change that. Dance with me." Something in her tone, not pity, not arrogance, but a quiet understanding, made him stand. He placed his rough hand in hers, and as they walked to the floor, the world seemed to blur around them. The soft notes of the violin filled the hall as he held her cautiously, awkwardly at first. But with every step, his heart began to beat differently. She smelled of jasmine and sea breeze, and her eyes, strong yet vulnerable, looked at him like she could see everything he'd been through without a word being said. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel invisible. Sophia, too, was fighting her own battles. Behind her empire, there was emptiness, a life built on success but starved of connection. She had built walls so high around her heart that even she couldn't see beyond them. But as she danced with this quiet, gentle man whose eyes carried both pain and kindness, something inside her softened. It wasn't attraction at first. It was empathy, something pure and rare. The night went on. They talked a little about music, about how weddings were bittersweet, about how loss changes people. She learned about his daughter, Lily, and how he spent every night reading her bedtime stories just to keep her from crying. He learned about her loneliness, how power came with isolation, how everyone admired her but no one really knew her. By the end of the dance, something unspoken had formed between them. A quiet connection, fragile but real. After the wedding, life went back to its routine. Ethan didn't expect to hear from her again, but 2 days later, a black car pulled up outside his small apartment. It was Sophia. She said she wanted to thank him for the dance, and maybe, she added, to know more about the man who made her smile after so long. From that day on, their lives began to intertwine in unexpected ways. She would visit him at the local cafe where he often worked remotely. Sometimes, she'd bring Lily small gifts, coloring books, little dresses, things she thought a 6-year-old might love. Ethan tried to refuse politely, but Sophia always smiled and said, "It's not charity, Ethan, it's friendship." And that's how it began. Friendship that healed 2 broken hearts. Over months, Sophia started seeing the world differently. She found herself laughing, again, learning to cook just to surprise Lily with cookies, spending evenings at Ethan's tiny apartment instead of her luxury penthouse. And Ethan? He started to breathe again. He began writing code for a small project Sophia encouraged him to develop, a parenting app that helped single fathers connect and share experiences. She even helped him launch it through her company's tech incubator. For the first time in years, Ethan felt proud, not just as a father, but as a man rebuilding his life. Still, there was fear in both hearts. The fear of love returning when both had already lost too much. They never said what they felt, but everyone around them could see it. The way she smiled when he spoke, the way he looked at her when she played with Lily. Then came the day everything changed again. One afternoon, Ethan received a call. His daughter had collapsed at school due to a heart condition that had gone undetected. Panic, pain, and despair came rushing back. At the hospital, the doctor said she needed urgent surgery, one that Ethan could barely afford. He broke down in the waiting room, clutching her tiny hand as machines beeped around him. Sophia arrived minutes later, her eyes filled with tears. Without a word, she sat beside him, took his hand and said, "You're not alone in this." She used her connections, her money, her influence. But more than that, she gave him strength when he was breaking apart. The surgery succeeded. Lily survived. And when Ethan saw his daughter open her eyes again, he realized that miracles still existed, sometimes in the form of people who walk into your life when you least expect it. After Lily recovered, Sophia disappeared for a few weeks. Ethan thought she needed space, but deep inside he missed her terribly. Then one evening he received an invitation. Another wedding. It was her wedding, or so he thought. The invitation had her name, the same elegant handwriting, the same silver-embossed letters. His heart sank. He went anyway because he wanted to say goodbye, to thank her for everything she had done. He dressed in the same black suit he had worn that night months ago. When he arrived, the hall looked oddly familiar, the same seaside view, the same lights. People were smiling, but there was no groom in sight. And then, as the music began, Sophia walked down the aisle in a simple white dress. Beautiful, graceful, glowing. But instead of stopping before a groom, she walked straight toward him. The crowd fell silent. Ethan stood frozen, confused. Sophia smiled softly and said, her voice trembling, "This isn't my wedding. It's the beginning of ours. If you'll take my hand again." She extended her hand, the same way she had the night they first met. And just like that night, Ethan's eyes filled with tears. He took her hand, and they walked to the dance floor as everyone applauded. As the music began, Ethan whispered, "Why me?" Sophia looked at him with a smile that carried 1,000 emotions and said, "Because when I was surrounded by everything, I had nothing. But when I danced with you, I finally felt alive. And there, under the golden lights, with Lily clapping her little hands nearby, they danced again, not as strangers or broken souls, but as 2 hearts that had finally found their way home." The room faded, the world quieted, and it felt like time itself was holding its breath. Ethan realized that love doesn't always come when you're ready. Sometimes it comes when you've lost all hope, just to remind you that life still has beauty left to give. And as they danced, tears rolled down his face, not of sadness, but of gratitude. Because sometimes, one dance can change everything. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. It helps us bring more stories of hope, healing, and second chances to you. Special request comment below. Do you believe love can heal broken hearts? Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the most beautiful chapters begin when you least expect them.